Okay, welcome back once again. If you've already seen the North American edition, you'll know exactly what this is. It's the European version of the SPL breakdown. Now, before I go into it, just to let you know, there may be some vulgar language involved because I have a dirty potty mouth when I'm off air, and this isn't an official high-res stream, so I can say what I want. It's my personal channel. Fuck yeah, America. Fuck yeah, England. Fuck yeah, Brexit. And on top of that, fuck yeah, buy your fucking tickets now, please. Go buy your tickets over at highresexpo.com and buy your tickets quickly so I don't have to keep promoting it. At the same time as if you do buy your ticket by watching this, then come see me at Worlds, and maybe I'll even give you a bow tie or a high five or a sign your chest like somebody made me do last year. Yeah, buy your tickets so we don't have to go into that. And now we can go straight into Europe. Now, before we go through the teams, we'll start at the bottom and work our way to the top, as we generally do. But I'll quickly just break down each of these teams of what the names are, because a lot of things changed so far overall. Bipolar Method, artists formerly known as Paradigm. Before that, they were known as Trig. Before that, they were basically a mixture of Exposed Secrets and Dignitas, once upon a time. But yeah, Bipolar Method, #1 team right now. And then followed that is Energy Esports. Energy Esports were formerly known as Panthera. Before that, they were formerly known as Epsilon, who won the World Championships. And before that, they were known as Panthera again. Obey the Alliance is a team. Obey the Alliance. I want to keep saying Obey the Alliance, but it's Obey Alliance. Is a team that is basically called, well, it used to be called Hungry for More. Before that, they all came from different sources of life. Some guys from Aquila or Titan, some guys from SK Gaming, some guys from Team Coast, and some guys from Dignitas as well. Actually, one of those guys is the same person. You'll know who I'm talking about if you actually follow the scene or if you follow Dirty Scousers. Team Dignitas is still the same Dignitas with a few roster changes. Fantastique is a team that's new to the Pro League this split after SK Gaming, after Fnatic no longer held their spot as the team disbanded. And then Cringe Crew is once again the same Cringe Crew from a couple of splits ago. They used to be called London Conspiracy a while ago, but Cringe Crew is still Cringe Crew. Cyclone GG, another team that's new to the Pro League this split, getting in through the relegation fight, doing a good job of fighting their way up past Torpedo Gaming to get into that spot. And then finally, Sanguin Esports at the bottom, which will be the first team we talk about, which used to be called Leftovers until this split. So, let's go through the teams, and we'll start things off straight away with with the page load. Sanguin, there you go, look at that little logo, looks like a vampire. At least I think that's what they were going for here, was a vampire look. And I may get their name wrong because I think people say it's Sanguin or Sanguine. I don't really care. It's tomato to me. But here's the roster: Arkil, Murder, Dark Dodo, Cherio, and Nika. Additions this split were Dark Dodo and Murder. Murder, formerly known as part of Torpedo Gaming. Dark Dodo was part of Dignitas, who played the solo lane for them, but is predominantly a mid laner. How did Sanguin do this split? I mean, that says it all, right? Says it all, sadly. Still better than Randozo's, though. Hey, Europe's still better than NA. Just saying. Just saying. 1, 2. 2, 1. See? Europe is more hotly contested. That's all I'm saying. Just because of that, okay? Anyway, on to Sanguin a little bit more in detail. So, this team, Arkil and Nika, is their first rookie year in the Pro League. Same for Doc Dodo here. And those three guys have all been making improvements to improve... Sorry, strives to improve, I should say, overall. That guy, Arkil looks well like Ren's there. And yeah, Sanguin's season so far, well, they didn't find a single win this split. They're still struggling, and their synergy isn't there yet. And that's clear to see with how these performances have gone. And I've got the notes here on the side, as you can see. It says rookies are called rookies for a reason. And when you've got basically 3 rookies in a roster, it's going to make it very difficult for yourselves to find wins in the SPL. It's a difficult place to be in the SPL, and bringing a whole rookie squad on is not that simple to make it work for yourselves. Now, when you add the fact that you do have a former Worlds finalist in Murder to the squad, and Cherio, who's been around the scene for a while, those two do have the ability to help train these rookies and get them strong, but it's going to take time. It's going to take real time. On top of that, you know, Cherio hasn't had the overall knowledge of the scene at the highest level, to be fair to Cherio. He does have good understanding of the game. He's a fantastic player when his ping allows him to be a fantastic player. Let's just add that. But he doesn't know the top end as much as someone like Murder would do. And I guess this is down to like Murder and Cherio coming together and actually making this team work as a whole. They've not really had the best time of things, however, with how games have gone. If you actually look at where they actually found their wins over, sorry, their 2 splits overall this season. One was against Cyclone GG, one of the teams that they should be competing with towards the bottom, who were a team that they should be looking to beat consistently, just because they've got a little bit more of a base of players that have played in the SPL a little bit more overall and had found wins previously. And then obviously Cringe Crew. This Cringe Crew win was a very good start for them at the start of the season, and things were actually looking pretty good for themselves over here with Cringe Crew. Beating Cringe Crew in that first game, it was like, hey, Sanguin are actually looking pretty decent considering they've got 3 rookies and 3 roles, and then they've got, you know, a new mid laner this split and a new support this split, which means your trio synergy, which is very important, your trio synergy, which is your jungle, mid and support player, intertwine nicely together and are all on the same page. However, as time went on, it clearly showed that it still wasn't perfect, clearly, and they didn't do great. There's no real, like, predominant factor here as well, but obviously Europe is very contested right now. Even towards the bottom end, I will say that there's a divide between the top 2 and the rest, and we'll get to that later on, but the rest are still pretty close overall, although Sanguin definitely on the tail end of that one. Different situation than Randozo's, though. I think Randozo's have more to give than what Sanguin do right now. I think Sanguin really have to step it up if they want to push on further forward with time going on. I will actually have a little look at their picks just to have a look through. It says leftovers here because I've not updated this properly. I'm not got the bottom one filled in yet because I was lazy before I finished work the other day. But as you can see, like, with how their picks and bans have pretty much gone overall, is very consistent of what they want to get rid of. And they've been trying a lot of the variations we've seen already in other roles. There's a lot of Ares here, though, and Ares isn't going to be strong anytime soon, but he didn't really work out for them. But it was a Murder playstyle, and Murder's very aggressive support, and that's where it shows. There was nothing that really stood out to me. Like, they were trying the Frey and Leaf stuff just around everybody else as well, so, you know, how time goes on and things change. So let's have a look at Sanguin. Probably not going to do very well at Super Regionals. I'd give them... This is a chance for them to learn and get used to meeting each other in real life. Obviously, Murder's got LAN experience, Cherio's got a bit of LAN experience too, but the other 3 haven't got any. So it's going to be a testing time for them to really learn and grow as a team and see what they can do moving forward. I'm talking about moving forward. We move on to the next team here, which is Cyclone GG. And Cyclone GG, as you can see, there's so many pretty faces on your screen right now of all their lovely, lovely pictures, as this is a new team. Now, the only reason we've got one of these members of this team is because he's played in the SPL before for a whole split, which was Vote MBK, formerly a member of Justice, so had some time in the SPL on a bottom-end team, but I think his Hunter performance was pretty solid for the most part. He's actually showed pretty good consistency, Vote MBK, in my eyes. He's got a pretty good Apollo. Is the main god that I always remember him for is his Apollo play, which seems pretty strong. Next up is Callus, and Callus is a support player for the team, obviously. Rookie sit, actually first full split that he's playing in as well at the moment. The only time I've actually seen Callus play in the Pro League was for Paradigm at DreamHack, when Trixtank wasn't able to make it to DreamHack. Now, Callus seems pretty good. He seems pretty smart at what he's been wanting to do and trying to lead the team from the forefront. But for me, the major 2 players on this team are here and here. The mid laner and the jungler. Wolfie and Ice Ice Baby. These are the 2 guys that have really allowed them to get into a very, very good position overall with time's gone on. Very balanced overall in terms of picks. They're not too worried about that. Now, I do have written down here right next to it, as you can see, the Dark Horse team. Now, the reason this is the Dark Horse team for me is Cyclone GG have the potential to do great things, but they've just got to keep working and working away at it and not get disheartened by losing games overall. They need more experience as a team, understand each other a little bit more, and they have some of that already. Granted, just so you guys know, they came up from the SPL, from the Challenger Cup scene, so they've all played together for a while together, so they understand it, but they've just got to keep nurturing and growing what they had there. If you remember Panthera, when they came up into the SPL, their very first split wasn't fantastic because Rafa was a BM motherfucker and got himself banned. But not only that, they didn't have the greatest season, and they still took a little while to get their groove going. Granted, I don't think this team's groove will be as quick as Panthera's, but they have a lot of potential. Wolfie, for me, is probably one of the best mid laners right now, and has been around the scene a lot and deserves to actually get some attention now. He's fantastic. On top of that, Ice Ice Baby, I think, kind of came out of nowhere from my eyes. Actually got him confused personally with Ice HD, which I thought was the same guy at first, but it's not. But they are lacking experience here overall, this team. And the best thing about this, though, 4 splits, right? They've got a predominantly They got predominantly, when I say banned, by the way, for Rafa, it was suspended, but banned, suspend, tomatoes, you know? You all end up coming back somehow. But going back to Cyclone GG, splits, 4 splits for them. More splits than losses. Now, granted, more losses than wins, but more splits than losses is very, very useful for them. It shows that they're finding wins against teams. And when we actually look through the teams they found wins against, Dignitas is definitely a nice scalp to have under yourself here. Cyclone is someone you should be trying to take if you want to get yourself a decent position in the Pro League. Fantastic, your other team that is going to be in the Pro League with you after joining the split. But finally, this at the end of the split. This at the end of the split here, you see that? See that? That's Energy. That's the world champions that they took a game off in the very final week. Now, I'm not going to discredit their performance at all by saying Energy didn't play very well, but they didn't. But at the same time, Cyclone need to put that under their they need to take that with them and run with it, with how well that went. The fact that they managed to beat the world champions, which very few teams have ever taken games off the world champions, is a fantastic fucking boon going into LAN. If they can use that boon, it'll really come in handy for them moving forward. Cyclone for me, overall, are a dark horse. I know this at this low down, but for me they're a dark horse after that last game, and they keep showing things in games that are just nasty. That if Wolfie and Ice Ice Baby get going, things are crazy good about them. Deathwalker for me, I said at the start of the split and I felt like he was the weakest link on this team, but he's proved me quite wrong. I actually think he's pretty even with the rest of the team now. I was a little bit worried about Deathwalker's god choices and god pool and style of play and performance as a whole, but as time's gone on, I have to retract that statement and be straight up and be like, listen, he's performed a lot better than I expected him to. As time went on, it would have been the first person I would have looked to potentially replacing this team, but right now I don't think I could say that. It's not true at all. So yeah, overall from the boys, good little performance for their first start of the SPL. Obviously the SPL is not over for them. They've got the group stages next. We'll see how they do there. Next up is going to be Cringe Crew. Well then, Cringe Crew. Well then, artist formerly known as 4th position. Like, these guys should have been contesting up here with these two. Like, for the whole split. These two were definitely 1 and 2. These should be up here, and they're not right now. 1 win. 1 win. Oof. So let's go through the roster. What actually is this roster? Well, it's the same roster that Cringe Crew had the split before, apart from they added zeros to the solo lane. Now, they did have Zashu, and Zashu was another naughty, cheeky little fellow and got himself banned. So they lost Zashu and had to use Axios in the solo lane for a split. And Axios did pretty well for themselves. However, Axios was going to lose the spot back to Zashu anyway. But then Zeros appeared. You know, obviously Fnatic disbanded, and Zeros was a little bit like Masked in North America. He's like, hey guys, you got any jobs? I can play mid. I can play jungle. And they're like, no, we don't really have those 2 roles available. And Zero's like, well, solo lane's really easy. I'll just take solo if you do the solo. They're like, okay, yeah, all right, we can take it for solo. And that's what happened. They brought Zeros in. I mean, that's not word perfect, but it's probably pretty close, okay? And Zeros, yeah, I mean, he joins this squad, but they don't do as well as you'd expect for them at all. They don't do very well whatsoever as you look at this. They have underperformed. That's my first note here. Completely underperformed. And what they've been trying to do is work on compositions and synergies, which they're trying to develop on, mainly. And when I say that, it's generally down to the fact that Zero's joining this roster. This team had an identity here, right? That got them to number 4. However, this guy here, Zeros, him joining this team gives it an extra flair because of the fact he's got more experience in the scene. He's been with SK Gaming. If you didn't know who that was, Fnatic, SK Gaming, those two guys, those 2 teams did very, very well in Europe overall. Consistently in the top 3 for a very long period of time until last split. Very good performances from him. He's got experience. He's been to 2 world championships. And when you look at the rest of the roster, there's only one guy that could even look to match him in terms of that, which is Repicas. But Zero's very consistent. And so him coming on and bringing his knowledge base to this team is a boon for the team. B-O-O-N, by the way, in case you think I'm saying boom for some reason. But it's a very big boon for this team to abuse and adapt and work as a unit to really grow. The problem is that they've been doing that during the split, and it's really shown here as their only win. Their only win was against Cyclone. Overall, with how this one went on, only win was against Cyclone. They did take split against Bipolar Method, however, which isn't too bad, and a split against Energy. Now that shows. Now this thing here, right? This one against Energy is very consistent because they did that when they were in the previous splits. They kept finding wins against Energy, one of the only teams that actually could do that. So what does that tell me? It tells me one of the members of Cringe Crew that isn't Zeros had some sort of game plan going into it that executed it, and he got under the skin of Energy. I'm not sure which one it was, but it happened a couple of times. And it was really quite useful for them to keep being able to find wins. They do have the potential to be a top 3 team very, very easily if they put the grind in and work as a unit, basically developing these compositions and synergies correctly together. And this is basically a learning start to the split for them. They've had the time to learn, but it's time to grow up now. You don't have time to learn, you've got to put it into action. And that's what's going to happen for them going into the group stages now. If they want to go to super regionals, they have to, and I mean have to, stop learning and make sure that everything is working right. And by saying that many wins in the last 5 games is pretty useful for them. So they seem to be going that way. We may see them climb overall, and they are going to be noticed, that's for sure. After that, we then have one of the other newcomers to the scene, which is Fantastique. Now, if you don't know Fantastique, we'll go through them right now once this page refreshes. There we go. Fantastic looking little lad there. Obviously, we don't have pictures for these 2 scumbags just yet, but we'll get to them. Jermaine and Dardez and Mogao, the 3 members that you can see there. If you recognize those names or you've heard them before, that's because they were the Le Myrmidons, the Frenchies, that would always surrender. Not really always surrender, but, you know, lose games, which is the same thing as surrendering, because that's what French people do. But they're back again, and this time round, a lot better performance out of them. Mogao was probably seen as a very weak solo laner overall in terms of how the performances had gone previously. And Jermaine and Dardez, although very, very skillful as a squad here, the problem with that squad, with them as time went on, is when they were losing, they'd give up. They'd give up completely, and it'd show in their gameplay most of the time. They had the ability to really fight heavily in duo lanes. I was the person that nicknamed those 2 the Bruise Brothers, because when they first entered the SPL, they were unafraid to fight anybody. They were willing to fight any other duo lane in the SPL, taking on matchups like the Panthera boys, taking on like Trix Tank and Funballer, the aggressive teams that you used to see them. These guys are not afraid of a good smash in the duo lane. Problem was, though, is that as time went on, they didn't really find anything. Although this split a bit of a different story. I think Jermaine's really put on a show for us this split and allowed his team to really work out well because of that. And then Dardez, on top of that, has now combined with the 2 new members of this team, which one of them is called World Edit, and we'll get to him first of all. Now, World Edit is a jungler formerly known as Jiffy, mate, or Jiffy, who played for Fnatic. He was touted as one of the best junglers, the unforeseen talents in Europe, basically to rival that of Adapting. And what World Edit had was an issue was that he played it exactly the same as he did in Ranked. And the problem was, last split, he was trying to adapt his playstyle from being a ranked player that could stomp people to being in the SPL and make that work for himself. So decision making seemed very, very off when he was on the side of Fnatic. Sometimes either going too deep, sometimes not going deep enough, and really suffering and not working out for the team. And because of that, it probably hurt him more, because a lot of people touted him as being really good. The casters were doing it because the pros had told us about it. The pros were doing it too. He got on the big stage, and then he failed. You know, and then so the community is like, lol, really good jungler, lol, and the cast is like, what the hell, shit, were the players feeding us saying this guy was good? And the same was said about Dardez actually, but that's kind of rang true. But World Edit, yeah, this split though, different story. He's with Dardez now and things are working well with them, but he seems very comfortable now. He seems to be a little bit more in charge in this team, it feels, in terms of not necessarily full-on shot calling, but he's got good synergy with Dardez, and I would say those 2 are probably the main 2 shot callers for this team, and they kind of have to be. With being a jungler and guardian, that's generally your role anyway overall. Supporting junglers are generally the shot callers for the team. But he's starting to find good strides now in terms of... They've still got a few oddball picks that I'm not a big fan of, and that's cost them games in the past, which we saw last split as well, but a little bit less of that. We don't see any ISIS jungle out of them anymore. Although when we actually look at what their record was so far this split, it's 2 wins, 1 split, and 4 losses overall, and their wins have predominantly come, they beat Cringe Crew, which is a good little boon for them, very early on as well. I mean, week 2 win against Cringe Crew really shows that Cringe Crew weren't performing, but at the same time it shows that Fantastique were actually starting to find strides together, very, very strong together, and did a very good job because of that. That was a really good start for them. Then they went up against some of the bigger teams, Dignitas, Bipolar Method, Energy, very difficult ones to find wins against, and did actually end up against Sanguin. So overall, I will say they're in the nosebleed section now, and I've got the note here written next to him. What nosebleed section means is like, when you get really excited, there's people in the world that when they get overly excited, they'll have a nosebleed. When something goes so well for yourself, you'll have a nosebleed. And that's kind of what happened with this team. And then they have a lot of raw talent that needs moulding. And I'm going to go back to the final member of this team, which is Nulissa. Now, I'm not going to pay too much attention to her, just because of the fact that a lot of people pay attention to her because she's a female. And I don't give a fuck whether she's female, whether she's got a dick and a vagina at the same time, whether she was born with no sex at all. She's still an SPL player, right? Doesn't matter to me whether she's got a dick or not. It doesn't matter. If she's good enough to play in the Pro League, she's good enough to play in the Pro League. And is she good enough? Well, yeah, she clearly fucking is, because she's beaten how many other kids in mid lane this split when you look down these roster? Let's see. Kero. Wolfie. Oh my god, I feel so bad now because I can't remember Sanguin's mid lane. That's so rude of me. Who's Sanguin's mid lane? Who's that shitter in mid? It's Cherio! Is it Cherio? Bet I'm wrong now. I'm going to have to bring up the bio. I'm so angry with myself that I forgot it. Trying to be rude, but I can't remember who it is now. Feels bad, man. I want to say it's Cherry, but I think Cherry's in jungle still. Who is it? Yeah, Dodo! Sorry, Dodo. I forgive you. I mean, you forgive me, rather. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dodo. But yeah, I mean, she's female. Fuck it. Whatever, man. Get on with life. Stop worrying about it. She's a female. Doesn't mean she can't play the game. She's clearly shown that she can play the game because she's come up against some of the best players in the country. Well, the countries of Europe. Now, raw talent needs moulding. That's what I've got the note next to it. And Nulissa is one of those players that has some good talent that does need moulding. She's had help from other players and she's grown her game overall by playing with some of the pro players, and that's been really helpful for her. But she still needs work on the team environment, on working in the SPL and not just playing the casual stomp conquests. So she's still being moulded and still learning, and it's actually working out for them okay. I will say that trio synergy of Dardes, Nulissa and World Edit could be even stronger once Nulissa is more comfortable in the role in terms of SPL action as well. If you notice her position is sometimes, a lot of teams will try and focus her, which is one thing, which is pretty smart to do, focus a mid laner anyway. But at the same time, they can also exploit the weakness of, she's the one that is always going to be, she's very scared to go in a lot of the time because she's expecting to be focused. And if she can deal with that with her teammates and have trust in her teammates to protect her, then this team can grow stronger and stronger and stronger as time goes on. But for now, nosebleed section. I think they'll be very happy with their performance so far. They're going to go up to LAN and hopefully they do very well. And then next up, we'll move on after going through that and after embarrassing myself and poor old Dodo. I'm going to have to send Dodo some gems to apologise out of my own account now. I'm going to have to. I just feel too mean. Next up after Fantastic is the boys of Dignitas. What can we say about Dignitas? Well, this split, they brought in Ducky and Big Man Tings. Now, if you don't know these two guys, we'll just give you a quick throwback. Big Man Tings played for Fnatic last split, didn't have a great performance. The team did not have a great performance. I think Big Man Tings did fine. And Ducky was substitute for Panthera, who are now known as Energy, for one set when Dimmy wasn't available. And he looked amazing. So we'll start off with Ducky at the bottom here. Ducky, like I said, this is his very first rookie split, and for what he's been able to bring for this team, I think it's very solid. He's a very solid solo laner. He does his duties correctly, and he also looks for that extra that he doesn't need to have to do for his team to actually be very useful. But I still think Ducky is going to be very strong in that solo lane going forward, and I think he'll continue to grow. Potentially could be one of the best players in the world from solo lane, and potentially be in the likes of the best solo laners Europe has ever produced if he continues to do what he's been doing so far this split and so far from what I've seen out of him. He's got a lot of potential there, and he's just got to keep working on it. I think he's fantastic right now. We'll see how things go on as time goes on with him. Frosty and Shadow Nightmare, they're the core boys of Dignitas that have been around from the days of old, before they, well, back when they were Fnatic, and back before that they were known as Exposed Secrets. Those two are like, I don't know, peas in a pod, I guess is the best way. They won't leave each other's side for anything. I'm pretty sure if one of them got kicked, the other one would join them too, or something like that. And then Big Man Tings, we'll go to him next. Big Man Tings, support play for Fnatic last split. He himself had a pretty good performance, honestly, for a rookie year as a support. Support's a pretty difficult role to enter into the SPL because, especially, well, first of all, you're going to generally have to call a lot of shots because you're the one rotating the map the most, so you see the most map vision going on. You don't have to farm as much, but you've also got to play to the style of a team, and he had some of the most recognizable names in Europe on his team, with Reals, Maniac, and Zeros alongside him. You got to have a big mouth, be a big man, with some tings to be able to talk on that team and make things work. I don't think at the time, though, that they probably gave him enough credit for what he was doing because of the fact they've got more experience than him. And he probably did make some bad calls too. But at the same time, it was his growing split. And I think coming into this Dignitas team, it's actually helped him a little bit more because he's got a little bit more experience with dealing with people who've been around the scene a lot longer. And that's exactly what Suntouch, Shadow Nightmare, and Frostiak have had. And then we move on to Suntouch now. Suntouch, the man of many talents in terms of changing roles every single fucking split, pretty much. And when there's no roles available left, he's like, fuck it, I'll quit. He went to London Conspiracy and went, no, I'm done. I'm going to retire for a bit and then come back. And then he came back and played a bit of support. Now he's playing a bit of Hunter for himself as well. A few things about Suntouch's career, well, not career, but like this split. Started off with very magical focused of only Freyas and Chronoses, and everyone was like, is that all he plays? Is that all he can play? And I actually think some of that was down to the fact that they were trying to run something different here, Shadow Nightmare and Suntouch. Shadow and Dignitas were trying to run the idea of bringing Hunters to the mid lane, although they were bringing Hunters to the mid lane that you don't see as often as other Hunters. Example would be, if I can find the game very quickly enough, example would be right here. As you can see, the start of the split, it was all Hunter, but that name right in the middle there, in the mid lane, was like, what? Just to begin things off. And they were trying to find their footing and what they wanted to do with themselves. And Suntouch ran a lot of magical mages. As the season progressed, if I show you again, you can see that things did change up from about here onwards, where we started to see more and more Hunters being played out of him. So he does show that he's got some God pull to him, and he's not just going to be magical focused overall with how this went. But how's their split gone anyway? Let's go into why we're really here as well. How has their split gone for Dignitas? Expected finish. Now, I've wrote down expected finish here for Dignitas because that's where I expect them to more than likely be. Fighting in the top 4 half of the split. I actually had them a little bit edging out Hungry for More at the moment, thinking that they may have done a little bit better. But I think I had them at 3rd when I look at things. But they ended up with a decent record. This is probably the most even record you could hope for. 2-2-2. With how things have gone. They are constantly adapting their roster as well. Now I say that because of the fact that this is technically a new team again, with having Suntouch join them, and basically Suntouch changing role is still him joining them, then having Ducky join them, and having Big Man Tings join them. The only 2 remaining players from the last split is Shadow Nightmare and Frostiak. So once again, it's a learning environment for them. And they're still trying to find the playstyle, which is what I said about what they started off with a lot of magicals in the duo lane and a lot of physicals in mid in terms of Hunters. But as time's gone on, I think they're still trying to work out what's best for themselves. They did walk into Bipolar Method and Obey at the end of the split though, and I don't think that gives credit to the fact that, you know, maybe they should go back to running Hunters in the mid where they found wins at the start of the season, even though the main one was against Energy here. I think that's something I can go down to the Jingwei pickup as well. A little bit predominantly focused on Chaos though, in terms of what they like to play for, so they like to go for those 2 picks and try and get themselves a bit more of a comfortable thing of the OP side of things, and you may see some more of that as time goes on. But it's not like a big significant factor right now with just 9. Dignitas going to land though. I think they're still in a very good shot, depending on how the groups fall for them, of making it to the Super Regionals. And if not, I actually think say for example, if we take any one of these 4 in place of Dignitas to Super Regionals, well, one more team comes through from the Gauntlet. I'd actually have my money on Dignitas being the one from the Gauntlet if they didn't make it through anyway. I think Dignitas are fine for Super Regionals right now. If you want to bet against them, be my guest, but I wouldn't advise betting against them. I actually think Dignitas are guaranteed to go to Super Regionals, along with any team past this point actually, which you'll get to now, which is going to be, next up, the boys of Obey. Now if you don't know Obey, this basically is Hungry for More, who were playing last split, had a pretty good performance, went to DreamHack, and then shit the bed at DreamHack, is pretty much the story from them. And one of the reasons this team was put together was the fact that they've all got LAN experience. This is from like Nate's own mouth, Ataraxia's mouth here. We call him Nate. He likes it. It's fine. He's the captain. But yeah, he said himself, like, one of the reasons they put this team together is that they've all got LAN experience and prior experience on the big stage. Well, that big stage came round, and they all dropped the pants and just shat on the stage. It's pretty much what happened. And then they walked off again. It wasn't a great performance from them. And I think they know that themselves, but I think they can look back at that and work out what went wrong. And actually, that came off the back of a split that I think they could have been even more productive than they actually were. For that split as well, and I think this split actually shows that they've been a lot more productive this split as we go through it as well. This record, first of all, 5 0-2. That's a fucking great record, man. That's a fantastic record. Um, we'll start off first of all where the losses come from. Well, it's the cock block of the top two. They can't beat the top two teams at all. Like, they can't beat. The problem is they can't beat. Well, I've got PPPM, Polar Bear Mike. Polar Bear. PBM? Polar Bear Mike. Yeah, we'll just call it PBM for now. That's fine. That's me getting in my head. PBM, they can't beat Bipolar Method, and they can't beat Energy either. For some reason, finding wins against those two teams is just too difficult for them. I don't know why it's too difficult for them, but they really seem to struggle. There's something to do with the playstyle that these guys have, Obey, that just allow the other two teams to overwalk them. I actually think it may be down to their unconventional or unusual picks and comps don't work against these teams as well as they would like them to most of the time. And then on top of that, when they do try and run the same sort of composition as their opposing team, they're basically running almost compositions that are their second nature, if that makes sense. Like, they'd rather run their unusual, but if they try and run standard against these teams, well, then they're playing against those two teams that kind of made the standard of those two in Europe, and that's where they really struggle. I think that still shows that they're still growing as a team, though, overall, that they still can't beat those. And if Energy and, Bipolar Method continue to play the way they are doing, then you will see people catch back up as well. I think you'll actually see them catch back up, and it'll actually work out a little bit better as time goes on with them. Slightly chaos-sided, though, as you can see. 9 chaos picks shows that they prefer the chaos side of things, which gives them those 2 priority picks for their roles overall. I'm not going to go into role detail, because one of the reasons I don't really like showing the picks and ban stuff here, and it's very basic on this because I don't want to show you any more than that, is just because I don't want to show you the order they got picked in. Because if I show you the order they got picked in, then you have more of an understanding of where they're trying to focus their usefulness as a team too, which isn't necessarily, a good thing to do. I think it's better for, if teams want to fucking learn that shit, they should do the research themselves. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant about some stats and stuff. But yeah, chaos-sided, a little bit focused there. I think Obey are very, very strong right now, though, and we actually go through the roster and just go through them. Ataraxia, pretty prime, both been to the finals of World Championships. I'll always bring that up in Season 1. Put up a very good fight on the side of Europe against Cloud9, who basically put them in a bag and were beating the shit out of them until they came back into it. Next up, we'll talk about Captain Twig and Variety. Twig, formerly member of SK Gaming. After that, he was on Fnatic, and after that Fnatic roster exploded, he ended up joining here. Twig was undervalued in the jungle for a long period of time. He was predominantly a mid laner that I almost feel got forced into the jungle. I don't know if that's true. I've never really spoken to Twig about whether he was forced into the jungle and Zeros went mid lane when he was back on Fnatic. But now that he is a jungler, he's now found his footing a little bit more. I think the best position Twig could ever probably play for himself would be solo lane, just because he is a 1v1 god. Like, he's just very good at the straight up 1v1s. And if he could just sit in solo lane and do that all day, he'd be very good. But I don't think he's a very big fan of warrior meta, so I don't think we'll see him in solo lane anytime soon or anything like that. However, in the jungle now, he's started to find his playstyle. This team has been able to work around what people's likes and needs are in it. And one of the things Twig likes to do is farm and then turn up to a team fight a little bit later than initiation most of the time. He likes to counter-initiate a hell of a lot more. Very good at the rotations, though, when people do initiate onto his team. He can rotate in very, very quickly, and it does allow him, very much so, to be a lot more effective than where he struggled on other teams like the Fnatic when he was having to be the hard engage for the team. And actually, this roster struggled because they had Zindern, Obey, Hungry for More, last split at the start of it. And one of the reasons I think they struggle is because both Zindern and Captain Twig had the same sort of mindset of, like, they didn't trust Zindern, I guess, enough in terms of his engagement, and he didn't have the same sort of overall style of play that they were looking for, that they needed from a Guardian. And I guess that brings up, before I even get to right then, is Panda-like, which is formerly known as fucking Frezzy. This guy basically changes his name every damn split. Don't know why he does it. We all know him as Frezzy. He's still a fuckboy troll. Even in SPL, he's still a fuckboy troll. But what he brings to this team is exactly what they need. And what this team needed was a fuckboy troll. It's pretty much all there is to it. Yeah, Panda-like basically brings the ability to be very, very aggressive and bait himself into very bad situations. And those bad situations actually benefit this team very, very well, because he realizes that Panda-like will be willing to sacrifice his life for the good of the team. Him getting himself out of position and looking like an idiot sometimes helps the team to be able to coordinate where the focal point of a team fight is going to be. it works out very, very well for them. Plus, he's an aggressive player anyway. He plays the typical European aggressive play style, which is what the top teams have here. If you actually take Panda like and you look at the two teams above them in terms of Rafa and in terms of Trixtank, both those guys are very, very aggressive. Both of them willing to get themselves out of position like idiots at the same time, but it does allow their team to initiate off that. And that's also a thing that teams could eventually recognize about how the freaking game's played, is that supports are kind of initiators without even being it by just being out of position. Padalak kind of fell from grace for a long time because he couldn't find a team that wanted to work with him that strategy, but I think the time for Obey like just called for him at the right time, and he turned up and it was like, yes, this is what we needed, and it worked out great. And their synergy together, Prime being able to be the most consistent mid laner alongside Lobster in terms of like mid lane performances. And I should say, like, him and Lobster are most consistent, even Yamin too. I guess the top 3 mid laners in Europe are crazy. But Prime is just very, very good at overall positioning in a game. It's very hard to pick him off for free. And if you do pick him off for free, you kind of second guess. It's like, what the fuck just went wrong? How is Prime dead? If he does get picked off, it's very, very strange. But yeah, Prime's very good at that. His Vulcan's still the best in the world, and he's shown it again once more this split. But his synergy with Pandalike and Captain Twig has really come to a decent segue point now, in terms of like, he knows when Pandalike's going to initiate, he knows when Twig's going to initiate. They wait for Twig to get online. His rotations are being able to be picked up because he's trusting his jungle and support to protect him on the rotations a little bit more as well, and so that sets him up nice. Variety in the solo lane, Mr. Harry Cummings, or Cumming as it is. Harry's alright. I love Harry. Now, Harry got a lot of shit. Harry got a lot of shit for a very long time about being a bad player. And to be fair, Harry wasn't a great player because Harry liked to go man mode the whole time. Variety would always look for the highlight reel play. And I don't think he was just to be clear, he wasn't intentionally looking for the highlight reel play, Variety. What he was fucking doing, though, he was making some crazy-ass decisions, right? Because he was like, I think I can kill him. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can kill him. Yeah, I think I can kill him. Oh, I'm dead. Shit, there was a rotation. And that's kind of where Variety struggled a little bit. Plus, he didn't always stay up to date with the meta sometimes, Variety. Like, he wouldn't read the fucking patch notes and then play the patch and pick shit like fucking Ninja Tabby on tier and shit like that, because he's not realised the patch had changed. But he is a solid solo laner. He's one of the most difficult ones to face off against because he's shown a lot more variety, would you believe it, in his god pool. And when we say variety and his god pool, now, the God Pull thing, like, it was an old joke of old about Variety, but when he first started playing the game, back on Team Coast, he mainly played healers. He basically played Raw and Aphrodite. Sort of like all the other healers in the solo lane, like the Mogals, like the Maniacs. Like, a lot of players used to play that. But then he transitioned into the Warriors, but he didn't get to the Warriors for a while because he still tried to run things like fucking Zhong Kui and Arachne into the Assassin stages as well. But eventually, like, now the Warrior meta settled in, he's actually really strong, and he's also picked up the Guardians too, which have given him a lot more room for maneuver within the team. And that's kind of what solo lane now is this kind of flex pick that needs to fill a role for your team, and Variety in this team is actually being able to do that, and it's given them a lot more variation because of that. The fact that Panda like loves playing Ymir, and now Variety is bringing Ymir in, it gives them a flexibility, a little bit of guesswork to the enemy team that they can't actually work out what the fuck he's going to do, what he's going to be playing against. So it allows a lot more growth for it as well. So yeah, his performances have been pretty solid for the most part, and he's gone off quite a few games as well. I actually think the one time, I think everything started to change for Variety when I look back on that play as Kronos versus Al Kwong, I think. Like, it was a highlight reel play where he went in and was about dead, and F-Dot and Dallas were like, oh yeah, he's dead again. What a shock. Going into a silly fight. And then he killed him, and it was like, what the fuck? And then from that moment on, everyone was like, yo, this kid's actually really good. And I'm like, well, he's never been terrible. He's just, it's not where it's at. So yeah, that's Variety. And then finally, Ataraxia. Solid, consistent, Mr. Smooth, Mr. Suave, the Welshman. Overall, Ataraxia has been pretty consistent. I will give him a lot of credit for some of the builds that we've had come through the scene overall in terms of the Hunter role. He's probably the European version of Zatman in terms of Hunter builds, just because of the fact that every build before Ataraxia brought out the Unicorn build always came from Zatman. Everyone always looked at Zatman and went, what's Zatman building? Okay, that's the Hunter build. Well, Ataraxia was one of the only players that refused to do the Zatman builds, whatever they were, and then brought other builds in, and they worked out for him. A lot more aggressive now is young homie Nate. He used to be very, very passive in lane, but I know he's put a lot of work into being aggressive in lane, and it's kind of shown as the games have gone on. Like, he's got a lot more aggression in there. He's turning it on a little bit earlier in the game too. For the most part, he used to be a bit of a pussy bitch boy when it came down to it in terms of farm, not really go for trades too much because he was scared of losing them or being out of position or getting ganked. But now he's a lot more aggressive in the laning phase, and I think some of that comes from more experience now and realizing the meta's changed slightly, but at the same time also having Panda-like alongside him has actually helped him out a little bit more as well, because Panda-like's so aggressive. If your support's constantly going aggressive 24/7, you're like, alright, I guess I'm going to have to go aggressive. But at the same time, I mean, he used to have that sort of thing with Murder alongside him, because obviously him and Murder used to be the two Titan boys, and Murder was Kanye life, if you remember back then. He was just as aggressive as what Panda-like is, but I just think that Panda-like's kind of pushed him a little bit more, and it's worked out a lot better for him. That's pretty much this squad. Now let's look at how their split went. Like we said, Germany comes back all the way down to, they've got to learn to beat Energy and Polar Bear Mike or Bipolar Method. Like, you have to beat those two teams. If you can't beat them, you don't really have much hope against North America. Because for some reason, Europe seems to suck against North America right now, and it's still showing in every single LAN. Granted, like, we've not had too many LANs recently since the World Championships, but the World Championships showed the weaknesses in Europe's game versus North America's game, and you can't deny that. Like, I am European, and I may be slightly European fanboy-esque sometimes, but that's kind of because it's needed, because I'm the only European that this community fucking has that people recognise, that isn't a player. And because of that, like, you can't deny that Europe is a little bit weaker than North America when it comes to the straight up matches. We lose more matches than we win. We've got one exception to the rule, which we'll get to eventually. We all know who that is. But overall, yeah, this team has to work on being able to beat Energy and Polar Bear Mike, or Bipolar Method, whichever way you want to look at it. They have to be able to beat both of those, technically, because if you can't beat Polar Bear Mike on the side of Envy, you ain't going to beat another team. But at the same time, you've got to be able to beat these teams, or at least put up a consistent fight against them every single time. And that's the important thing for these guys to recognise. And I think they know this themselves. Like, they realise that, what the fuck, why are we getting cockblocked about those two? Because if they could have actually taken splits off these two, things could have been even more different in the standings. And that's an example. If they would have taken a split here, these two losses to these two teams were both splits instead, they'd be above Energy right now. Just to clear that up, they would be above Energy, because they had more wins than Energy. Remember that. Good times. Okay. And then moving on to that team that's next on the list, it's Energy. If you don't recognise them, they were formerly known as Panthera, and before that, the World Championships, they were known as Epsilon. The World Champions, I should say, #1 team out of Europe, of the world, with some of the best players seen in the world. And you can see the team on your right side: Emilito, Irafa, Gamin, Adapting, Dimmy. This team hasn't changed since, way before Worlds. Basically, they've been pretty much together for a year. Still unbeaten. Just want to clear this up. Still unbeaten since Super Regionals last year, when Paradigm, now known as Bipolar Method, beat them in competition. They have not lost a set to North America, and they have not lost a set in the SPL. They've not lost a single set. The worst they've done is split. So just to show consistency there, the worst they've done in pretty much a year now is split with teams. Very consistent. Overall. But when we talk about consistency, we'll get to that now, because you can see it's 4 wins, 3 splits this time round. Their splits were against Bipolar Method, Cringe Crew, and Cyclone GG. Now I'm putting same old Energy here, because even though people saw them drop games against Cringe Crew and Cyclone, I still think this is the same tale of Energy that we had previously when they've dropped games. The one against Bipolar Method is probably the most interesting out of these, but Cringe Crew have something about them that is kryptonite to Energy, at least for one game. There's something they do, Cringe Crew, now that has an answer to Energy every single time, so they at least even things out with them. The Cyclone GG one, though, I will say it was the end of the split, and they did this previous splits, and if you look back at the records of the games they played, it's a very similar tale of the tape there. Cyclone GG found that win. Full credit to them, first of all, but I don't think Energy were really as focused as they should have been. And they've done that before as well. Whether they were off, whether they weren't playing themselves, whether they're fucking around a little bit, I don't know. But they've done that before, and we've all seen it happen before with them. You can't class that as like the turning point of the great World Championship team falling. But these two losses, I mean, to be fair, just this loss on its own had already solidified them that they would not be number one. Because we'll get to that in a minute. But this has solidified them. They weren't going to be number one anyway. They were going to be number two, and nobody could catch them at number two. And that's why when you look at the Cyclone loss, it's kind of like, well, that game technically didn't mean nothing to them because they couldn't be number one because they fucked up against Cringe Crew. But at the same time, they didn't respect Cyclone enough, or they fucked around. Whichever way you want to look about it, it wasn't great. Back to the team, though, just as a whole, just a recap of these guys. Still the best team in the world, from my eyes. I actually expected them to probably lose the World Championships this year if North America didn't do all the role swaps and stuff and the roster changes. I actually felt the way the North America team was breeding right now and the strength that it had against European teams already from experience and the fact that Energy was starting to lose the odd couple of games against some of these teams, probably could have seen Energy get beat at the World Championships. Problem is now is that NA all went their different ways and then started reforming teams, so they're all working on synergy issues all over again. So Energy's still number one. Even though they're number two right now, Energy's still number one. I think the only team that could actually beat them could be Bipolar Method. I think that's where we're probably looking at. Because Bipolar Method seems to have had their number a while now, and then because obviously they've been scrimming a lot together, you get better understanding against each other, which makes it very difficult to exploit weaknesses of a team if you know that you have weaknesses too at the same time. So solid performance from Energy, not as solid as they would have liked though. At the same time though, don't forget that number one spot not going to them is makes me very happy, because a lot of people was always saying EU's really boring because of the fact that Energy just win every game. Well, bullshit. Energy don't win every game. You all talk at your asshole. No, nobody wins every game over in Europe. And when we say that, we get to the final team that didn't lose any games this split. Just to be clear, neither did Energy. But the last team on the list, which is the artists formerly known as Paradigm, Bipolar Method, Funballer, Tricksank, Lobster, Cuvo, Fredzelia. Another team that pretty much was unchanged since World Championships. They formed as Trig and then became Paradigm, and now they're here, sat at number one. Now, to be clear, Super Regionals last time round, they did beat Energy and take the number one spot there as number one seed from Europe. Did they go to Worlds and perform as a number one team from Europe? Fuck no, they didn't. They got shit stomped by Enemy. Why did they get shit stomped by Enemy? Probably because they underestimated them a little bit, to be fair. And at the same time, they weren't on top of the game, and I don't think their picks and bans were very good at World Championships either. But that's just straight up truth, and I think they know that too. Very solid roster overall. They've been consistently together for such a long time now. I don't think this team will ever really break apart unless somebody retires or decides to just give up on life completely. But yeah, I'm pretty sure like this team will be solid for a long time to come, and they just need to keep working on things in terms of synergy, making these compositions work for themselves. They have these oddball picks that they'd like to throw out now and again. Cuvo Fred is probably, I'd actually put him like, it's really difficult to say because of LA, but in Europe he's definitely one of the best junglers, if not at times he outshines Adapting at times, like clearly outshines Adapting at times, just because of like his depth in God Pool. His depth in God Pool alone. I've seen this kid play Guardians, I've seen this kid play Warriors, I've seen this kid play Assassins, and when Bipolar Method ever get behind in a game and things go to shit, the one man on that squad that will turn that team around is Cuvo Fred. Like, that is the man. Now, other than the fact that he always needs to take a shit before he has scrims or has a LAN match, which, honest to God, guys, that's true. This kid will always sit down during scrims, and you can ask the pro players because they'll tell you it's true. He'll sit down in scrims, and he'll go, alright, let's do picks and bans. Alright, cool. Alright, pause, I'm going to go take a shit. That's Cuvo Fred for you. But, as a player, fantastic. I actually think he's one of the fucking best players right now, and he's the one thing that can help out Bipolar Method ever going forward if things go bad. Tricksank, very, very solid for the most part. It's good to see him back and very focused, and I think that's one thing as a whole team here. Focus is one thing to mention. I will say as well, and when we say focused and consistency, it's the same sort of thing. Best start in a long time I wrote down here, because generally this is all losses. This is a typical season. If I do it this way, this is a typical season coming out type. Typical season. That's generally how Bipolar Method work at the start of the split. Is like that. That's generally what Bipolar Method start would look like. Because they don't consistently do things over and over again. However, this time round, Trick seems very focused, as does the rest of the boys too, and they've really stepped it up another gear right now. I don't think they have an overall... If I had to give an overall superstar merit to any of these players, it'd be Cuvo Fred right now. I think he is the superstar of this team. Lobster is very, very solid in the mid lane. He doesn't really make a mistake, and if he does... You know, it's like, well, fuck. And he takes it on the chin. But he's a very good, consistent player. Also, he's got a very important nature for this team as well. His nature is really important in terms of how his mindset is in the game. He never seems angry. He never seems upset. He never seems happy either. Because he has to be this focal daddy for the team. Papa Lob, right? You've all seen it typed time and time again, but he really is the daddy for this team. You've heard the comms as well. They're all fucking around getting excited about winning the game. Lobster's like, shut the fuck up. Let's do 2. Let's do Goal Fury. Quiet. Let's go back to base. Like, he needs to be this authoritative figure to these guys, and that is what actually allows them to be as strong as they are. Funballer toned his aggression down a little bit this split, which I think is good, but he's still got signs of that aggression. Funballer's the one loose cannon on this team where he's like, I'm massive, guys, let's fight! And the rest of his team's disengaged, like, okay, let's go back to base. And Funballer's like, 1 second, let me just go in and try and blow all my cooldowns to see if I can get a kill on my own, and then I'll leave too. And sometimes he dies for that, and it could really come back and cause him a lot of issues, and the team a lot of issues too. But that ability to actually go aggressive could really help out this team at times, because Funball and Lobster have had for a long time and still do have to peel for themselves a lot of the time. So being aggressive with that front line actually gives them a little bit more safety. Finally, final member to really touch on here is Azalea as well. Azalea, formerly classed as one of the best players in the world, best solo lanes in the world. You can't really deny that for a long time. Game Hunter, when Game Hunter was actually the best player in the world after the Pentakill at launch tournament, I asked Game Hunter personally, I said, who do you fear playing against the most? And he said Azalea. And the reason he said Azalea is because he had no fucking clue what Azalea was going to do. Because Game Hunter could work out everyone like a mathematician, with a mathematician's brain, what they were going to do and everything. And again, Azalea, he had no fucking clue what that kid was going to do. And Azalea from then on was like known as a very good player in the scene. Since then, he's still got his oddball picks, and I won't be surprised to see him come back into oddball picks. But he's realised now that he's got to adopt the same old strategy as every other solo laner. And if I'll quickly show you what I mean by that, I will find it here when I can find the name. Just have a little look at that list there, and you'll see exactly the same thing that you've seen everywhere in the world. Look at that little flavour there. A little bit of flavour. But look at that. Look at that. What does that tell you? It tells you you've got to adapt to the meta, and that's what they need in the solo lane. They gave him something solid, just like the way Energy gave Dimmy something solid that will help him in the later stages of the game, but will be able to hold his own. He's not a hyper carry anymore. That position is not a hyper carry position anymore, and that's pretty much how it's going to be. Instead, it's going to be a teamwork as a unit, and Cuvo Fred, pretty much the all-star right now for this team. Their hopes of Worlds this year, very, very high. I see them going to Super Regionals. I think them versus Energy will be an absolute treat once more, because I think they're some of the best games Europe has to offer is Bipolar Method versus Energy. Top games, top tier games, fantastic to watch. I predict that the top 4 teams in the standing there will go to Super Regionals, along with one of the others from the bottom, obviously, because 5 teams from each regional go to Super Regionals. But I don't think we're going to see too many surprising things about teams that actually get to Super Regionals. The groups may be different, though. Like, one of these teams may drop out of the groups and be forced to go through the gauntlet, but I still think the top 4 would definitely be at Super Regionals with their performances. Hopes of Worlds, however, for Europe this year, I didn't really say this about North America, but I'll do it for Europe. Hopes for Worlds this year generally are resting on Energy and Bipolar Method's shoulders right now. Predominantly Energy. Bipolar Method still can't beat North American teams and are still struggling against them. I don't know why. Obey can't beat Energy and Bipolar Method yet, so I can't really class them as being able to compete against North America just yet. And the other teams I just don't have hope for. So predominantly on Energy's shoulders for chances of the World Championship. Unless things change, you know, and time will tell. Like I predict these things very early. It's currently September. By the time December rolls around, the meta may have changed so much so that it's all about having a Ymir solo lane, an Ares in the support role, and then a Nox in the mid lane, which would allow Dignitas and the crazy boys of EU to actually do crazy things, you know. And that's pretty much Europe in a nutshell. If you all enjoyed, thanks for watching, and give feedback. If you don't like my feedback, if you don't like my opinion, it's fine. But obviously, look at the records overall. They give you the most feedback and pretty much tells you how the games have gone this split. The SPL continues in 2 weeks' time with the group stages. Make sure you tune in for those. More announcements to come on that. But on top of that as well, if you do